Cold open question of the day for a Monday, May 13th episode of my guy, Brendon Kleen. Back into the show, we're going to preview the WNBA season, which is finally here. But in the preseason, A'ja Wilson got something that I thought was maybe the coolest thing I saw in basketball this weekend, which was a homecoming preseason game at her alma mater, South Carolina, back in her home state, back in her stomping grounds. All the content coming out of all the videos, amazing. So it made me think, who is a player, NBA, WNBA? I'll even say if you want to do it in the go into the past and get to do this, I'll open that up. But give me a player and a place you would want to see someone go back to.
My mind just went to all the international players. And I think we would have seen this already, frankly, Chris, if the biggest international players weren't from countries that are in Eastern Europe that are a little tough to finagle like an NBA game in. But the natural one feels like a Victor Wembanyama game in Paris. Like that, we're headed there. Within the next 5 years, that will happen.
I think we're getting it. I think we're getting it this year.
I honestly haven't seen if it's Vic, but then great. Then we're already headed there right away.
So the only someone can fact check me. I will fact check myself. But when the Cavs were there last year, and L'Équipe, which I definitely just butchered, the French sports national newspaper in France, reported when they reported Cavs.
It is Spurs Pacers.
Nets.
You're right. So
they had.
It was. I mean, it was hanging
Sure,
low-hanging fruit like that. The NBA wasn't. I'm not even giving them credit for being ahead of me because it was just so obvious. But that one is going to be very cool, and they should do it every year.
Yeah.
Why not? They have a Western European star. It's not Giannis with his kind of difficult relationship to Greece or any of these other things. It's just the dude's from there. Play a game there. Great. Sign me up.
Yeah. So here are my three. And they're all different. I want to see Jokic in Sombor, Serbia. I don't know what that looks like. I don't know what arena we're playing in. I just think it would be sick. You know? To your point, Eastern Europe probably not going to happen. You know? Tough. Okay. Number 2. I would like to go back in time. I want to see like Ricky Rubio play in Spain and like Marc Gasol play. I want to see like that generation of Spanish guys play in Spain. It would have been cool to see Rubio, who just recently was playing for Barcelona again before I think he retires, playing with Jabari Parker of all people. And Jabari Parker's like just shit on the NBA and all of his quotes and how the atmosphere is better in Europe.
Coping.
Regardless,
heavy coping going on.
Seeing Rubio in that environment, heavy coping. Shout out Jabari, you made a lot of money, my friend. Rubio in that environment would just be cool, and any of those Spanish guys of that ilk would and they're all about to be gone. I think it would be cool. The last one, this to me was the first one that came into my head. LeBron James back in St. Vincent St. Mary High School. Let's just do it. Exhibition game, preseason game, before he goes. Let's just play a game back where it all started. He can come up in a Hummer.
Yeah,
let's do it.
The problem is the NBA is just too big now. Some of these cooler homecoming things, like even the idea of an NBA game in a college arena feels a little hard to imagine in 2024. So that's part of why I was like, the international stuff feels more likely, even if it's in kind of a lesser gym, some kind of tiny arena. It's the ability to just the globalization of the game and all the stuff we hear is just that will do it for them more so than LeBron's from a small town. Who cares? For the NBA, who cares? Yeah.
The real they can't make money on St. Vincent St. Mary High School with bad concessions and no VIP seating. Capitalism. The real answer is actually just Caitlin Clark going back to the Iowa Hawkeyes football stadium in 5 years and doing that. If she's like great as a pro, just go back and do that.
Sell out Lucas Oil for that matter.
Let's do Aces Fever. Like at Lucas Oil. Pat McAfee can do color. Can guest host. Yeah, Pat McAfee on color. And
Michael
just
Cole
doing
on
his with the same tenor as a WWE broadcast. It's like give me Ruocco, Cole, and McAfee.
We can do marketing for the league.
That's what I want. All right, coming up on today's well, we are available for consulting fees like we're McKinsey, is what I would say, Brendon. We're available. We're available for lots of money and little work. All right, on today's show, Denver, Minnesota, Game 4. Denver's got the series even up. The Atlanta Hawks, 3% chance, have won the NBA lottery. Sure. Donovan Mitchell vibe check time with Cleveland down 2-1, and we're going to look ahead to the 2024 WNBA season. It's a Just Basketball show. Let's go. I'm Chris Manning. That is Brendon Kleen. If you haven't already, please subscribe, rate, review on your podcast platform of choice to the Just Basketball Show. We are here not once, not twice, but 3 times a week, Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays, covering all things basketball. And we're really running the gambit today, Brendon, with NBA playoffs, with the Atlanta Hawks, with trade speculation, with the WNBA. So let's start with Denver, Minnesota. Another really competitive game, another very tense game in a very kind of back-and-forth series at this point, with neither team winning at home, with Denver looking kind of dead in the water in 2 games and now kind of flipping that totally on its head. Where are you at with this game? Where are you at with this series?
I mean, it's still all about confidence to me. It's what Wes and I talked about coming off of Game 3, and I think a lot of the elements that have flipped can kind of be traced back to that, and the confidence shift that we've seen from Denver being on their back foot to being on their front foot, somehow doing this for both teams in the absolute wrong arena. I'm not really sure how we got there, but you just look at the way that Jokic was aggressive as a scorer tonight and the way that opened up so much for what the Nuggets want to do on the offensive end. He had 35 points, 15 of 26 from the field. Started it out early with, I want to say, 8 points in the first quarter, if I'm not mistaken, maybe more. And with that mentality from him of reading the help as a guy looking to drive to the basket and score the ball, that just started to open up a lot of other things. And I think Aaron Gordon on the other end, what he's done in games 3 and 4, I think goes a long way toward disrupting what Karl-Anthony Towns has been able to do on the offensive end. Just kind of playing Cat physically, and even though he's smaller than him, just adulting him around.
Cat, who was good as a driver before this series, I think even in parts of the series earlier, has not, like, he looks like he's never driven to the basket before in some of these moments. He looks uncoordinated, uncomfortable. He's flailing around, and he's not even really getting bumped that hard. It's just like there's a guy who's standing his ground on him, and he's just kind of fading away. It's light work from Towns, and not in the fun way. It's pretty light.
Yeah, I mean, you're right that he's not getting pushed off of his spots in order to be missing those shots. I think you just watch Gordon off the ball with Towns, pre-catch, pre-screen. He's setting the tone physically and not allowing Towns to be the guy to do that. You combine that with Jamal Murray making shots. You combine that with the way that they've treated guys like Jaden McDaniels as a non-threat on the offensive end and dared him to shoot, dared him to beat them, whereas in the first round you were seeing the Suns close out to that guy like he's a 5-alarm fire as a shooter. And it's just all these little ingredients that have laid the foundation for this confidence flip where now you're watching these games and it's very clear the Nuggets have the upper hand.
The other little thing that Denver did in this game that I love, that I thought was really ingenious game planning, was they're running these soft traps on like Mike Conley or whoever the ball handler is on the perimeter, whatever side Nikola Alexander-Walker is on. So if he's in the corner, they're trapping that soft trap on that side, trying to funnel the ball to Nikola Alexander-Walker. And Nikola Alexander-Walker is either flailing up a bad 3 or he's giving the ball up right away, and it's disrupting any rhythm. It is not even super aggressive. It is just like dictating the ball to a spot they want it to go. And if Nikola Alexander-Walker hits a tough corner 3, you're like, great, fine, congratulations. But he's panicking, and the Wolves in general right now are, to your point about confidence, I thought, except for Ant, everyone looked very rushed. Even Mike Conley, one of the most composed players in the league, is rushing 3-pointers in transition at times. And it's like, it's all out of sorts for them right now.
Well, you mentioned like it's not any sort of overly aggressive thing. I don't think Denver's defense, even at its best, really is. It's just
no, it's not
positionally sound, right? So it's like the shots that are going to be taken by the opponent, they're kind of predetermined that Denver's okay with that. that's what their defense is going to do. They're going to send the ball, like you're saying, where they want it. They're going to have a guy with the ball. Okay, either you're going to drive or you're going to have to take the pull-up three, or you're going to have to pass it to this exact person, and we're not going to let the opponent take a lot of threes that are just wide open and all that kind of stuff. And that's really all it takes, especially, again, with a team that they looked like world beaters in the first round. They had the best offensive rating in the first round, but I think we know from a talent standpoint they are still exploitable, and they looked like it. They have looked like it in the past 2 games, and I mean that's why I mentioned the Gordon Towns matchup as the key of that, the head of the snake. If Towns had a better game, this looks a lot different. He's the second best offensive player on this team, but if that's not working, it starts to get ugly in a hurry. And I think Conley's a great shout too. Just where are they getting it? I mean, Anthony Edwards, who I think we should give a little more credit to Denver before we jump too quickly to that dude, but he's doing everything he can. Everything else feels like it's kind of hit or miss with the Minnesota Timberwolves right now.
Yeah, and I some of this stuff also I think is self-inflicted. We were texting you, Wes, and I during this game, Brendon, and you had a point that I thought really summed up the second quarter for this game, which was for a stretch. I don't know exactly how many minutes, but it felt like a long, impactful stretch. The Wolves' 3 best players are off the floor, and the Nuggets are going to run. At that point in this moment, if it's the regular season, if it's mid-February, you're playing the Hornets, whatever, I don't really give a shit if you're not going to put your 3 best guys back on the floor to stop that run. But here, in a game I would argue you probably not need to win, but should really be going all out to win if you're Minnesota, to get a 3-1 lead, to protect home court, to take back control of the series. They didn't do that. Chris Finch did not elect to do that. They let this ride out way too long, and Denver gets the lead. And then when Denver gets ahead of you, and they are humming, and they are now humming, they are now moving side to side, they are comfortable, they are flowing, Christian Brown's giving them great minutes, all of this stuff. Murray got absolutely on fire to start the second half after he hits the half-court heave at the end of the first, and then the second half comes out absolutely flamethrowers after a very quiet start to the game. When Denver is rolling like this and they are humming, you are swimming upriver against the current trying to come back against them. If you are 10 points down, it might as well be 15. It might as well be 18. It does not matter. They are because of how they play and how precise they are, you have to be like near perfect to come back against them. And Minnesota was, except for Ant, was like nowhere close to that standard you kind of have to be at.
Yeah, it's the same even as what we saw with the Lakers, right? I mean, in that case, it was these early leads by LA where Denver slowly chipped away and then overtook it, and then you saw the fourth quarters really be where the Lakers were panicking. But Denver's going to make their run. I mean, that's really the bottom line. No matter if you're ahead or they're ahead or whatever, you're not going to overwhelm them. You're not going to surprise them or force them into mistakes. I mean, game 2 already feels like an aberration, right? Where they just crumpled. That's not normal for them. So, yeah, I think that run at the end of the first quarter, they go on a 12-0 run, like you mentioned, Chris, from about 4 minutes left to about 1 minute left in the quarter. Cat was 0 of 7 in the first quarter, which contributed a lot to that.
He got a nice Zach Lowe, like Anthony Edwards rejuvenated Cat piece, and then he's been dog shit for 2 straight games. Tough look.
Then they opened the second quarter with Conley, NAW, Slow-Mo, McDaniels, and Naz Reid, a lineup that up until that point in the postseason had never played a minute together. As you mentioned, Cat, Gobert, Ant, all on the bench. Ant did have 2 fouls, so okay, but still. And Cat sucked, so I guess it's like, can you really fault him for benching the guys who aren't playing great? Foul trouble and missing shots.
I think I would have just played Ant. Is the thing. I understand the 2 fouls. I think it's worth the risk. It is worth the dice roll.
He also played 45 out of 48 minutes in this game. So
Josh Hart saying that's
to the same point we were making the other direction, right? Where it's like, how much can he really do? Yeah, Josh Hart. It's light work.
Yeah, Josh Hart's like, play 48, coward. Like, it's fine.
Yeah,
it's great.
So then Denver continues their run, 12-2 run. They're quickly up 15, and altogether, I believe it was a 24-4 run. Mm-hmm. They did end up making their own. They pushed back, the Wolves did, with a huge lineup with McDaniels at the 2 and all 3 of their bigs on the court, where they were +1 in about 3 minutes with that lineup out there. So it's hard for me to overly criticize Chris Finch for trying stuff when some of the stuff he tried did work. Like, I'm not going to shred him for it. But yeah. I really think, to maybe flip it to the Wolves side even more, Chris, we talked about Towns. We can get to Ant. But this was an awful Rudy Gobert offensive game.
Awful.
And
awful.
That was such a big ingredient for them through their first 6 playoff games, is him, especially in the pocket on the short roll, scoring, getting into those quick kind of post-up situations, finishing off of one dribble into a bucket, or finding a shooter to kick out to, making those quick decisions, having a little more range and a little more ability in space in those quick decision types of moments. He has 5 turnovers in this game, and he's 5 of 9 from the free throw line, including a couple misses in one trip in the fourth quarter that would have cut the lead to 9. Just ugly. So this really, in a lot of ways, I mean, shout out Naz Reid, I guess, but this was an Ant and nothing else game on the offensive end for Minnesota.
Gobert looked hesitant in this game, which has never made sense to me, why he feels like he needs to be hesitant on offense. It's kind of the weird thing with him, right? If you're Rudy Gobert, the only player you should be really like worried about contesting you, it would be like a clone of yourself.
I mean, he's hesitant because he doesn't have the skill level to do what he knows he needs to do. I mean, it's like, yeah, nobody can block his shot, but is he coordinated enough to catch the ball consistently against good defense, even if it's somebody an inch shorter than him or 2 inches longer wingspan-wise, and finish through that? No, so he's in his head about it. I mean, I think that's what's going on there.
That and the free throws, I'm sure, is nagging in the back of his head. It's like, do I want to be on the free throw line? I mean, he took the most free throws on the team in this game for the Wolves. He took 9 free throws. That's not like, and got to 8, so close. But when Rudy Gobert is taking the most free throws on the team for you, that's a weird place to be if you're Minnesota as well. And he's obviously not giving you much else. It also just, I think, Brendon, tell me if you think this is fair or not. I think Gobert looks more comfortable on offense when it's him and Towns, or it's him and like Naz Reid. I think when one of those guys is absolutely kind of rolling and the defense has to more react to those guys, his job becomes so simple that it just gets presented to him. When that doesn't happen, I think that exasperates everything that goes wrong with him on the offensive end. And that, to me, was kind of this game for Gobert in some ways.
Yeah, I mean, when the spot-up shooters aren't making shots, there's just going to be less space, right? I mean, I think Michael Porter Jr. on the defensive end tonight had a really, really strong game as the kind of bouncy, reading the floor, low-man helper, where he's helping off of oftentimes decent shooters, whether that's McDaniels or whoever it might be, even Naz Reid, Alexander Walker, whatever. But he, I think, is starting to kind of figure out how to take that 1/2 step, put one hand in Gobert's face, whatever, in those moments. So he deserves credit for it. I think Jokic was kind of getting a body on the roll man a little earlier, or just disrupting the rhythm of that stuff too. I mean, just playing harder is a lot of what we're talking about on Denver's defensive side. They just weren't putting effort forth in games 1 and 2 very much. In this game and last game they did. So yeah, I think it feels like this series is just returning back to kind of a stasis that I think is how we expected it to look from the beginning. And it took a while to get here, but like Denver winning by 8 and out executing, and some of these offensive warts popping up for the Wolves, like if you had transported this conversation pre-game 1, Chris, I think it would have been like, well, yeah, that all makes sense. Towns had a wild game. Gobert wasn't great on offense, and Ant was the only guy who could consistently score. Meanwhile, Denver's an execution machine and get an early lead and don't give it up. It's like, sounds right.
The Nuggets thing is this is simple, so I want to acknowledge that. But to your point, it's like playing hard, and then Jamal Murray has runs of making really hard shots that he's getting defended well, and it just doesn't matter. It's like, okay, I don't know what you're supposed to do at a certain point, It's like sometimes I just look at that and I'm like, that's the recipe of a team I don't know how you really beat. It's really hard to like beat that team, particularly when you do some of the things we've kind of got into that are self-inflicted and maybe just structurally kind of a problem for this Wolves team, even if it worked really well for them the first 2 games. Can we just hit on Murray for a second? Because we didn't our show, just based on our schedule, didn't cover Game 3. He was unbelievable in Game 3. just like peppering everywhere, clearly out to prove a point. Slow in this game. I thought Minnesota did a great job early of being a little more intentional about denying him the ball, being up in his grill, to McDaniels in particular, being very physical with him on defense. That guy gets the one heave, and it feels like his brain just like lights on fire and he's ready to go. In that third quarter, he's just like, you're like, sure, great. Jamal's being Jamal. It doesn't matter. You can't really defend him when he gets in this little weird zone. That guy fascinates me because he had a 19-8 game, not a huge night by any means, but I look at it and I think that was the second most important player on Denver, just like, amid everything. It's just like he's such a weird guy in this series because he's so bad the first 2 games, great in game 3. In this game, it's like 8 minutes of excellence, and it kind of outweighs everything else he is or is not doing. Yeah,
I don't want to take credit away from him, but I think it speaks more to the Nuggets as a team than just Murray just suddenly is making shots he didn't make. I think that the space he has to make those shots, who is guarding him and how tightly they're able to guard him, who's initiating the set, which increasingly has been Gordon in games 3 and 4, rather than Jokic or Murray in terms of just walking or running the ball up and initiating. They've put the ball in Gordon's hands early so that Gobert is either having to meet him and already kind of out of his comfort zone, more on the perimeter to start a set, or like you saw at times around midway through the first quarter, they actually put Ant on Gordon as a panic adjustment off of that because Gordon's been having so much success doing it, and they actually put, for a possession or 2 at that point, just to disrupt, they put Rudy on Porter Jr. So yeah. I think a lot of the things that the Nuggets have been able to adjust, just playing faster, straight up, has been a big part of that, has all allowed Murray to get space, get rhythm, get the timing that he just is so dependent on, whereas in those first couple games, he was just having to chuck stuff up over guys that had 6 inches on him too often late in the clock and everything else. The other part, though, to kind of come full circle on the confidence, Reggie Jackson and Justin Holiday shooting 5 of 8 from 3.
Big.
I mean, that you hate to boil it down too much, but like, it's kind of, I don't want to say the game, but like that's a huge thing.
That and Brown. I thought Brown's
Alexander Walker and McDaniels can't make their buckets, Yeah, and Brown was 1 of 1 and scored off, attacking closeouts, got to the line, did his thing.
Well, and Brendon, I don't know if you heard this, but he's they only mentioned it like once or twice, and we've only heard it once or twice. He's won. He won 3 straight high school championships. Yeah, 5 in a row for him. I don't know if you heard that.
So I guess that just means the Nuggets are going to win every title until he retires. That's pretty cool for them.
That's how this works. He should get a max contract. LeBron should trade for him. Like, they don't need Trae Young or Donovan Mitchell. They need Christian Brown.
The winner of winners, baby.
Yeah, we have to hit on Ant though, I think, before we move on from this game. He did everything he possibly could. 45 minutes, 6 of 25, 5-8 from 3. 5 assists, 3 turnovers, had a game-high 44. Everything that we said about the Wolves, Brendon, doesn't really apply to the game he had when everyone else, I think, was hesitant and maybe lacking confidence. That dude is not lacking confidence. That dude is not lacking... he has no fear for anything he's doing. It almost feels like at times the Wolves need to catch up to him and play, like, feed off of him more than they already do. It feels like in a game like this, just kind of following his lead even more intentionally would get them over some of these humps. Or at least I'd like to see what that would look like if they all just kind of could take 5% of Ant's antness and inject it and figure it out.
I think you're giving a lot more credit to Anthony Edwards' energy and tenacity than his like freakish, insane basketball talent. That's what they don't have. That's what they need 5% of. But it's being like better at the sport.
I just like watch him like go, and it's like you can tell even when he is rushing and trying to go, he is not like freaking out. Where he's like, oh, there's a like Mike Conley. This possession has seared into my brain in this game. Fourth quarter, they get a stop. They get an advantage because some Nuggets player is like down behind the play. Conley gets up to the other side of the court. He dribbles past like the top of the right wing towards in that kind of nebulous zone between the corner and the wing. He takes like a off balance ish contested 3 when if he had made a pass, they could have at least moved the ball and had the advantage. And instead, he took a rush three. Gobert got the offensive rebound, got fouled out of it, but he splits the free throws. You could have got a much better possession out of that. When Ant's in that situation, even if his playmaking, he's not like Luke or anything, but like in that spot, he's not going to freak out. He's going to understand what he's seeing and set it up as best for success, whether that's him driving, whether it's him spraying to a shooter. Like, there just needs they need the 5% more composure. Like, they need that dial turned up, and Ant's the only one who plays composed. Cat played this game like he'd never been held a basketball in a playoff game before. Like, I understand Ant's athletic ability is part of it because he can finish through guys. He had an amazing dunk in this game.
It's easy to be confident when you can do everything,
Yeah,
but I hear
so it's
the composure's a good word for it. Composure's a good word for it. I mean, I think Conley, all things considered, 9 assists, 0 turnovers, 15 and 9, no turnovers, a little bit inefficient, but they got a decent Conley game. I really do think Towns and Gobert and the shooters are to blame here. But yeah, I mean, look, Ant to me is at the level where he feels like the first guy I can remember since, I guess I would say, I mean, I don't know. We've been arguing about how to compare Ant there were too many days off, Chris, between games 2 and 3. We had a bunch of shit to just kind of rile ourselves up about. But the whole Michael Jordan thing, whatever, I don't really have an opinion there. But I think he has been, in this playoff stretch especially, the closest thing to Cleveland LeBron the last time that I can remember in terms of when he is playing in space, his combination of reading the floor, shooting ability, and driving ability feels legitimately unstoppable. Like, I don't think there's really an answer for it unless you can, reconjure that era of Andre Iguodala again, and I'm not sure there's a defender like that in the NBA right now. There's nothing that Anthony Edwards nothing is stopping him. No coverage, no individual guy, no anything. Now, he's played 2 mediocre defenses, all things considered, in Phoenix and Denver. Be interesting to see if, he had to face a really his own defense or something, but I don't know what you do with this guy. I mean, he's averaging 30 plus for his playoff career now after what he's done this postseason. This is just what it is. There's not much you can do, and if they give him even a little bit of help, this team can be awesome.
All right, so on this series, this game discussion on this, who are you favoring the rest of the way? We've seen 4 games.
Denver.
I am too. This feels like Denver is now back in control of the series.
Yeah, like I said, I mean, we've kind of gone back to the past 2 games felt like what I thought the series would feel like. So I'm not going to ignore games 1 and 2, but the fact that they've now done it twice themselves makes me feel better, and they have home court back now.
I think Ball Arena is going to be rocking for Game 5. Would be my
Always
guess.
is. It's not just the altitude. Their home crowd is awesome.
Yeah. All right, let's go to the other end. Teams that don't have a chance to win the title, I would say, in the near future. That's a little mean, Atlanta Hawks, but whatever. Atlanta Hawks, you have won the NBA draft lottery. 3% chance. Here's my take on this, Brendon, then winning the draft lottery. If this was a better draft, if this had been, let's say, obviously last year's draft, but even some other draft we've seen in recent years, maybe like the Paolo Chet draft, or the Mobley, Jalen Green, Cade draft. This would be a golden ticket to reset your roster. This would be a golden set to reset everything, rebuild, trade Trae Young, get some picks back, trade DeJounte, keep a Kongwu and Jalen Smith, and draft your first overall pick and just retool. I will be playing draft catch-up for the next month. I say that, what I'm about to say with a caveat, but this draft, from everything I've read from this very smart people that do that for a living, this does not seem like a draft that would really be that golden ticket. I don't really know what the number 1 pick. I don't feel like it's the number 1 pick, but what kind of juice are you getting out of a pick in a draft that it doesn't feel like a draft anyone's particularly excited about?
Yeah, you don't know, right? I mean, but I guess the thing is they still have Trae Young, so that's their golden ticket, right? So I think if you kind of reframe it that way,
if you like Trae Young, if you really, really like Trae Young, which I think if you want to quibble about Trae Young at this point, I'm cool with that.
Well, me too, but I mean, Do you think they're trading Trae Young?
I mean, I could see it. I absolutely could see it. I just think we're also getting a weird NBA summer. Everything
but they just got the thing that you tanked to get. So trading Trae Young to me makes less sense now because I think this pick to me is an opportunity to reset. Yeah, it's not resetting with Victor Wembanyama. It's not even resetting with Paolo Banchero. That is a worse outcome just historically. That it sucks that you finally win the lottery in a year where that's less valuable, I'll say. But to me, Chris, the real downside of the uncertainty around this draft, I think we always talk about it in terms of it sucks that there's no clear-cut number one, kind of like what you were just saying. Oh, you don't get a Vic. I think the worst part is that you could legitimately take somebody and just get it wrong. It's the fact that there's not even a consensus number one is more so the problem than that the consensus number one is bad. You know what I mean? Or a little subpar compared to other years. Like, even if they could have taken Jabari Smith Jr. to pick kind of like the odd man out of one of the drafts you just brought up. If there was even a Jabari Smith Jr. in this draft, I think people would be like, great, you got like a nice 3-and-D forward who's athletic, went to a blue blood program, nice recruit, keep developing his game, and you're on your way. It's the fact that they could legit swing and miss that makes this really suck. Not so much that the guy they get could be a little worse than other years.
Is this the 2013 draft then? Like, is that what this feels like?
I mean, yeah, that's what it's been compared to all year.
Yeah, I just want to put I just want to put a hammer on that. Let's just that draft for comparison. If you're picking one in that draft, shout out to the Cavaliers for what they did here. Anthony Bennett, Victor Oladipo goes 2, Otto Porter goes 3. Cody Zeller goes 4. Alex Len goes 5. Nerlens Noel, who most people thought would go 1, but had an ACL injury in college, goes 6. Ben McLemore 7. KCP 8. Trey Burke 9. CJ McCollum 10. Michael Carter-Williams was the rookie of the year in that draft. He was the 11th overall pick. Obviously, the big name in that draft is
decent players.
There's like a
Giannis
lot of Giannis is at 15.
Rudy.
And Rudy's in that draft.
Joker draft too, right?
I believe I'm scrolling
41.
down. Yeah, no, I think he's the next year. This is not the,
next
I don't
year?
think, no, yeah, next year.
So, look, but there's names there, right? I mean, and also the Cavs can't complain about draft lottery luck, so there's your one you get, but sorry. You got just LeBron James. I don't know if you've heard of that gentleman.
Yeah, I'm very aware.
So
yeah, very aware. Yeah.
Yeah, so then they won the championship for the team, so
yeah.
With all due respect,
but I guess the Atlanta, as a comparison, the Atlanta Hawks don't have a LeBron James coming home a year later to save them. That's the difference.
Exactly. I mean, but so that's the thing. But like, okay, so to bring it back to the Hawks, I think for them, I want to know where you stand because I think this is an opportunity to really kind of reset things, and I think I would be shopping, not say sell everything off, but I would be exploring deals for Bogdanovich, DeJounte, DeAndre Hunter, Clint Capella, and just use this as an opportunity to reset things around Trae. Now, how he feels affects that a lot. I'm not an insider.
Yes.
I don't know what that looks like. But we've seen this kind of work, right? Like, I even think back to the Mavs. They make the conference finals in 2022. They miss the whole entire playoffs in 2023, but they come out of that year with Kyrie. And then now they're right back to potentially being in the conference finals. Now, Luka's a better player than Trae, of course. Caveats, all there. But you can kind of do this pretty quickly. And I think if you have Trae Young and Quinn Snyder, you have a pretty high floor. See if you can retool this thing pretty quickly. Get off some salaries that you regret accumulating, especially, I think, DeAndre Hunter.
Yeah.
And kind of jump off and have a little more financial flexibility, have some more youth on the roster, and you're going to have a good offense. So what else can you do to build a little bit smarter around your best player and get back to where you were in 2021?
Yeah, the only guys on this roster that I'm tied to, if you're doing this version of that, and Trae, it's cool to deal with a little bit of a retool, would be Trae, it would be Onyeka Okongwu, and it would be Jalen Johnson. Anyone else can be had.
I would even take Okongwu off that, frankly. I mean,
yeah.
I think it's just two. especially because Okongwu's already signed his next deal. It's like, the value of kind of the low salary developing kind of that's passed him by. I feel like this past year of Okongwu, I got a little lower on him. I'm not sure he's ever going to be a 40-minute playoff starter against every kind of center in the NBA. He might be a little more of a role player.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think if I'm going to do this retool, I want to keep one of him in Capella, and I'll take the guy who's 23 instead of 29.
Sure, yeah. For next season, it's like they're not going to change 15 spots on their roster. But if I'm just thinking the biggest possible picture, it's probably just Trey and Johnson as far as what I'm tying down to the deck.
Those are the top two, and if you can get someone to take DeAndre Hunter, please do it. If you can get someone to take Bogdanovich, who I think you probably could have traded within the last 2 years if you had a little more foresight, I think you could have done it. I think, Brendon, the question is,
still has a couple of years left on his contract, and I think a scorer like that's going to have value.
A good team should still trade for him, to be clear. I think just is it a Bojan situation where
get a first round pick for him?
Yeah. Should that maybe that's
he just scores no matter what the defense is, no matter the other talent around him. Bogdanovich has gotten buckets. Sacramento, Atlanta, whatever. So a good team should absolutely take him.
So with this pick, I'm curious to see also, Brendon. I think I could see a world. So this name will come up again when we talk about Donovan Mitchell next. But they were one of the teams that Mark Stein reported are kind of being talked about as an Ingram team, which I don't know. I don't think of Ingram as a guy that is worth what the number one pick is as of right now. But if you're interested in Ingram, and maybe that's just a Murray Ingram, if you said they did some kind of Murray Ingram swap, moved on some of these other guys and took Alex Sarr, or whoever they decided they want to take, maybe they clear out the centers and they just play it really safe and they go with Donovan Kleen from UConn, and just go uber safe in this draft. Not saying I would do that. He's 6 in the ESPN mock, but it's
I've seen people bring it up. I don't think it's crazy. It's just kind of the hitting you of good Lord, if that guy's the number 1 overall pick, that's what this draft is.
Yeah, and I think that's what it is. I don't think anyone's juiced about anyone else in this draft. Maybe the real sickos are, but I don't think broadly anyone is uber excited. I mean, Ron Holland is.
That's the thing, right? Not as this guy is the crown jewel of everything. There's good players, but
Yeah, there's no one at 1 where you're hell yeah. So if you do something like that and then you take a more developmental, there's a way you could also walk a line for them. And to me, that's probably has to be the path if you're going to do this, because Trey is he's making a ton of money. You have Quinn Snyder, who is, I think, can be a project style coach, but I think also you're someone that you want to try to win with. I don't think of him as necessarily building player development stuff in the same way. It's I know he did a lot of that in Utah, but I think you bring him in at the time you did in part with a mandate of trying to win basketball games. So I think something where you get rid of some of the salary. Maybe it is the Murray Ingram
really
thing.
Intentionally tanked.
No, did you see the video of Landry Fields reacting to getting the pick?
Did you see the video? I have a quote in our outline of him saying, you build through the draft, you get players through the draft, and that's the best way to build. But I didn't see any video.
They had him mic'd up, and his face was he didn't say very much, but he didn't seem enthused in what he was saying until after he was off the dais. But his face, you could tell there was a sense of shock, which I'm sure for them it's a 3% chance, right? Yeah. So it's I wonder if they're. You could have done a version of what we're talking about. I think they would have had to this summer anyway, where it's Murray. You go to Chase Ingram, get a better wing in there, shed some salary, try to reset in some way. I think that was forecasted as well as early as mid last season when we were debating if the Lakers should trade for DeJounte Murray, right? And everyone in basketball was debating that trade. Now this is this could be the scaled up version of that, where you have a lottery. You do. Even if it isn't a guaranteed home run, you have a lottery ticket now to do something really interesting. And if building the draft, this is kind of good. If everything goes right, this is your last chance to do something like this, in an unexpected one at that.
Well, I think they actually could be back in the lottery next year if they are kind of doing this reset,
but
I said. But the odds of getting all the way to 1.
Yeah, are you picking 9th? Are you picking 9th next year? That's just historically a qualitatively different place to pick.
Yeah, of course. So my question would be, I guess, to flip it and maybe segue us to the other team that jumps out to me in the aftermath of this lottery is just to flesh out the other direction they could go. Who's the best player they could get with one? If you're talking about a willingness on the part of Jimmy Butler, Paul George, I mean, just throw another name out there, Karl Anthony Towns. Not like I think he's worth the number 1 overall pick necessarily. I don't know if any of those guys really are. I don't think Ingram is, but who is the best player, and is that worth exploring? I guess that's obviously the other question that's going to have to be on their radar. Or do you do like a Tatum Fultz situation where you just kind of say, but no one is going to want to trade up to 1, I don't think, in this draft for the same reason you don't want to take the guy at 1. So I don't know how high that other option, how much value that other type of direction of trading this pick in some kind of way really gets them, which is, again, why I kind of return to the reset option.
I think a Tatum Fultz style trade could make a ton of sense for them. I think that would be kind of the way to go. You still get a pick, you get some more assets, maybe you can move some stuff around.
Again,
no one's going to do it.
Do you think anyone wants to do that?
No, no. I was going to agree with you. It's like you can't like smoke screen the Wizards into being like, I don't know, isn't there someone you surely want? And you're like, no, everyone knows the same thing. No one's super juiced about this draft. The best player they could get for 1.
Donovan, but that doesn't fit.
No. I mean, there's. You could say Donovan. You could. Ingram would be. I bet it's like that's not worth the 1. I think Carl's not worth the 1.
So weird because it's like the mental value of the number 1 overall pick still just feels like something that you have to like honor.
We have to respect
the idea of
it.
like we traded the number 1 overall pick for Brandon Ingram. It's like you're going to get laughed off the face of the earth, even if like the player you would get might have decently similar value in 3 years to Brandon Ingram. It's just bonkers.
We traded the number 1 for like mid to late 30s Jimmy Butler and gave him a lot of money. Is like an insane thing that it's just like you can't do it. You can't do it.
Yeah.
So who's
but
your
at the
other
same
team
time,
that,
it's kind of like I don't know. It's weird. It doesn't. But then you think about like, okay, but let's say another team does trade for Jimmy Butler. What they accumulatively give up will probably be more valuable than the number 1 overall pick, and all things considered. But it's just like the idea of the top overall pick, that just means something.
And like there is one of those things, and the Hawks are an example of this because remember they were the team that valued Trey over Luka, and like obviously that draft had multiple teams valuing worse players. They valued
Trey and another pick over Luka. Let's be fair.
Okay, I just doesn't matter. You should just take fucking Luka. But like I mean, the Kings should still get shaded more. Took Marvin Bagley. Yeah. There are teams will even if we from the outside we don't feel a certain way about guys. Some team is going to be like, I love Alex Sarr, and just be like get really upset. Like there's some team out there that is like obsessed with Alex Sarr. There's going to be some
but
team.
The thing is, they will feel like they can get him right.
Exactly.
Exactly.
Yeah. They can't trade like it. So you're kind of stuck.
Which is where the smoke screens that you mentioned are going to come in. If the way we will know that Washington or Houston or San Antonio or anybody likes a player is if we start hearing that the Hawks like them.
Yeah.
That's where this is going to go for the next 6 weeks.
Yep.
You will know that a team behind the Hawks loves a player if you start hearing a bunch of insiders say Atlanta likes that player. But actually, Houston is a team I wanted to jump to.
Okay. They are in some ways, Brendon, to me, like they would have been, they were also on like my short list for this exercise. What a weird team to be. For a team that has spent the last year trying to just like spend money and grow up and has a lot of young guys already. What a weird team to end up with the 3rd pick this year. Like this is just generally a weird lottery, but like 1 and 3 is super weird in particular.
That's why they intrigue me because I think that they are even more likely to trade this pick than Atlanta.
Should they trade for Ingram?
And maybe they're on a list. He's on a list of people I have in that thought experiment. But I think before we even talk about that really quick, this is the Nets pick.
Yeah, shout out.
The fucking Brooklyn Nets.
So good.
It's not bad enough that the Celtics are about to win a championship with the core that Brooklyn basically drafted for them. Like, we're headed toward Boston having a really good shot at a championship in 2024. Already made the finals in 2022 with the team that Brooklyn wrapped up and gifted them on a silver platter. Now the Rockets are about to get another top 5 pick in addition to Jalen Green and Jabari Smith because of Brooklyn as well. And not even for, honestly, as legendary of a thing. It's James Harden. And it's not like Kevin Garnett and Paul Pierce, which I know were at the end of their careers, and that was also a pretty stupid trade. But at the same time, at least it's Kevin Garnett and Paul Pierce, not James Harden. Like, you know.
Yeah, I did just text Brendon, our mutual, the only Brooklyn Nets fan that I know, about this to find out. And if he texts back before record, I'll report back with, I'm sure, a very angry rant.
Okay, so my question with Houston is, what can Jalen Green at number 3 get you?
Oh yeah, put Jalen Green out there. That they should not be tied to him, I don't think.
They have salaries, including Jalen's. I mean, he actually makes $12 million because he was such a high pick.
And he is rookie extension eligible. It's time. It's time to pay him.
Yeah, so him, you got Jock Landale, Jayshawn Tate. That gets you, and that's, you know, not vital guys outside of Jalen, to $27 million. You can add from there. You can do 3-teamers and all kinds of crap. But they at least have the building block salary-wise to get a player. So it's like, could they be a Donovan team? Does he fit with Fred VanVleet? I actually don't hate it. Could they revisit the Mikal Bridges thing that they apparently pursued at the deadline? I think ding, ding, ding would be, you know, I think that's a very likely possibility. DeJounte Murray, Brandon Ingram, Jeremy Grant. There's all sorts of Grant's probably not worth it, but you know.
No.
They have a real opportunity here because they're a lot closer than Atlanta is. They're a lot closer than San Antonio or Washington are. So in a weird draft, considering the Jalen Green uncertainty, Houston feels like they're going to be on the Rafael Stone has made like 8 calls already tonight.
Sign me up for them trading for Mikal Bridges right now. That's perfect. Mm-hmm. That's perfect.
Dylan Brooks and Mikal Bridges on
Good
your
looks.
wing.
Ime Udoka's and Fred VanVleet, who's like a little older but is annoying as shit as a point guard defender. Yeah, It's great. I'm in.
I like it.
My team is the Spurs. I don't want to overthink this. This is the team that is Victor Wembanyama. Mm-hmm. Pretty good. They have the 4th and the 8th pick. Mm-hmm. They clearly just I want them to just draft. I don't care if it's Rob Dillingham. I don't care if it's Nikola Topic. Just take a guard with one of these picks, please, for the love of God. Like I don't want to go into next year with not an interesting young guard on this team.
Yeah, if you think they're agreed on the guard idea, if you think in a draft that has like 5 international dudes in the top 10 mix that they're not walking out of this with the European dude, you're mistaken. They're going to be having another Euro on the team. So from there, it's just what position, and I agree. Guard sounds good.
Yeah, give me the guard.
I know they have 2 picks also, but
what they do with these 2 picks, I think you're going to learn a little bit about what the overall franchise building plan is around Vic. I mean, a guard is like the one positional need, but you could convince me you could go a bunch of different ways here. You could get you could take another guard if you wanted to, like, and get a combo type guard if you wanted to go. You could go forward. Like the ESPN mock, for instance, has a 23-year-old kind of more plug and play forward locked into them. You could shoot a lottery ticket and go like a Ron Holland. You could do a bunch of different things here and go a bunch of different ways. And this is their first chance. And like if Vic is as good as I think we believe him to be, they're gonna hit the gas here right away. Two picks in the top 8. In not a great draft, there's still 2 picks in the top 8 to build around Vic, and maybe your last chance to like pick that high. Like, so I want to see what they do.
And if they take players, right? I mean, I think a trade combine and trade up, any of the options are available to them with that much flexibility. I think, to me, as far as Vic is concerned and the roster is concerned, the number one question that I agree we'll start to get an answer to with how they pursue this offseason overall, but especially getting 2 more young guys in the door, is to what extent do they see Vic as a primary playmaker for the team?
Yeah.
Right? Because if they take Ron Holland, for instance, not like a high-level offensive creator for himself right now, inconsistent shooter, kind of similar to Sohan, but I've seen people like the idea of him there. I don't mean similar in terms of everything about them, but those qualities of them being limited on offense are similar. If they go that direction, that tells me, hey, we think the ball's actually going to be in Vic's hands and he's going to be on the perimeter enough that we can afford a few non-shooters in the mix maybe more than conventional wisdom would think. If they do load up and get like a point guard and a combo guard, that says Vic's kind of going to be inside in the post. We're going to treat him as a more traditional center and build a more, not old-fashioned, but a more like historically normal team. So I think you're right. We're going to learn a lot. And then obviously if they don't even take the players at all and they trade those for a star, or they trade back or do something like that, then it's like, oh, they're really hitting the gas and like they're trying to win. They don't want to take any of these dudes and build them up for the next 5 years because Vic's about to be an all-star.
Yeah, so who's the best player that 4 and 8 and like some of their random collection of Island of Misfit Toys young guys? Like, who are they getting in a conversation to get? Is it a DeJounte unit?
It's hard before we know who all is going to be available to, frankly, you know?
Yeah.
Otherwise, we're just kind of saying the same names, but like, is there some mystery person we're not thinking of that becomes available? Or, I mean, the obvious one is a point guard, right? So DeJounte, Darius Garland, Trae Young.
Garland's the one I've been thinking about a lot. It's just like a good fit with Vic, I think.
Yeah, I've seen that out there, but I've seen people say, well, then what, but like,
what are they?
Part of it is salaries.
Yeah.
San Antonio, they're so young, they don't really have a lot. And then do they have any players that are appealing to a Cleveland team that would be trying to win now around Donovan Mitchell if they were to trade Garland? Probably not. So,
yeah, they're in a weird place in that way that they don't have like the other blue chip guy that's like no one's super juiced about Devin Vassell at this point, I don't think.
And San Antonio just paid him, so I think he's pretty close to off limits.
Yeah, exactly. All right, so speaking of Darius Garland, let's talk about Donovan Mitchell, his backcourt mate. Brendon, I want to turn this over to you first because you have been watching this from afar. I'm watching this Donovan Mitchell playoff run and thinking about this and that team far too much. So where are you at with Mitchell from what we've seen in this playoff run and what we've seen from him against Boston so far?
It's been a 180, honestly.
You all in?
I was very negative about Donovan last year. I just thought the way that the Cavs rolled over in that Knicks series was ugly. I mean, there's that's inarguable, I think.
That's kind.
Yeah, exactly. But it really wasn't even just that. It was all the way back to 2022 when any sports fan, any basketball fan could have seen a mile away that Utah team was ready to off itself.
Implode?
They were done.
Yeah, it was over.
Jalen Brunson killed them before we knew Jalen Brunson was special. Luka got to sit an extra game because of how bad that got, if you remember that. So, yeah, then it's 2023 with the Knicks series. And then it's this regular season that just was odd for the Cavs. Although he had another good year. He got MVP votes in 2023. Like, it's not like he's just kind of been like limping through this whole stretch, but it's been a downtick.
He would have been an All-NBA guy to me if he had been played the 65. I think he was that good this year. Particularly in the run where it was him and Allen. He was amazing during that run.
And so it's been a few things, I think, during this playoff stretch. I mean, not the least of which is like, obviously Orlando's a younger team, but I guess maybe comparing it to my neck of the woods, Chris, like I watched a so-called super team get smacked in the face by a young, good defense in Minnesota. Now, I know Gobert is a different force than anything. He's not young, but let's just kind of say Minnesota's not that different than Orlando. Donovan Mitchell stepped up and scored like 89 points in 2 closeout games against an elite defense. Devin Booker, Kevin Durant, Bradley Beal just shat the bed. So, like, it's still impressive, even if it's the Magic. And then to take a game from Boston the way that he did, he just scores efficiently. And there's always been this kind of dynamic, like him and Murray obviously had that series in the bubble. And, he went toe-to-toe with the Clippers the year after that, and they fell apart and ended up giving that series away to LA, but he was awesome. And then this run now, he produces. I mean, even when he was a rookie, he had that series win. I just wonder. It's bringing me back to the place that I was maybe in 2021 before this bad stretch of postseasons of like what would it look like with really, really superior talent, and we've really never seen that. And I think he's reminding us that he is absolutely good enough in the ways he needs to be good, pull up threes, getting to the rim, getting to the free throw line, to score against playoff defenses consistently. And whether it's in Cleveland or elsewhere, like, I'm back to believing that he can really, really, really drive winning in a postseason situation. And I'm all down. I think there's actually elements of the Cavs that it could be there. I don't think it's a hopeless lost cause, but I don't think it's this Cavs core, I guess, is where I'm at. Because obviously they're about to lose in the playoffs.
They're about to lose in the playoffs, and I think to explain like how that's going to happen, I think it's worth doing in this, and to just ground it in this series for a second. It's 2-1 against Boston right now. Game 4 is Monday. They're like 8-point underdogs in that game. I don't suspect they're going to win that game, unless like there's a way they can do it that's on the table, but we haven't seen the things consistently they would need in the series to do it. Whatever. Boston's also happens to be very good. Mitchell in that series is giving Boston everything they can handle. But the Cavs are having to like scramble to find an identity around him like all the time. And Boston is like centered in what it is doing. And Mitchell deserves to be in a situation. I think he's the talent for him, whether he's like the one, whether he's like technically the two, but is the one as the offensive engine kind of situation. If it's like him in like a Bam type, or if this is like him and Mobley in 6 months or something. Mm-hmm. Mobley, by the way, defensively in these playoffs, like incredible. If he
offensively just, not like terrifically different than Bam. For what it's worth. Like, we can drool over the Miami fit, but it's like he kind of has a Bam.
Yeah. The problem is that like the weird part about it is he hasn't like developed the chemistry. He has much better chemistry as a passer with Allen right now than he does with Mobley, which is some of that like Mitchell's. If there's one like little knock still on Mitchell that I don't think he's ever going to fully iron out, is that like he is more of a linear passer and he doesn't pass guys open. Like he is much better at the simple kind of reads that pop up that are just there instead of the improvisational stuff. But he deserves like a situation, Brendon, where like his team identity is just like concrete and it isn't like scrambling and relying on him to have monster games for them to even be competitive. Like he is his talent and where he's going, and he's in his prime right now. Like this is the prime of Donovan Mitchell.
He's 27.
He just to be 28 before next year. He deserves to have that run, I think, where he gets the opportunity to just be in a situation that, to your point, the talent, just everything makes sense. Like, and if let's to workshop it in Cleveland, here would be my pitch. This is how I would do it this summer if you could. They're in a tough spot because they don't have like any picks because they traded them all away for Mitchell, which kind of complicates this. And there's some other things they've done that didn't set themselves up great here. I probably would have given up another pick if I could to keep Markkanen and send out LeVert, because Markkanen on this team would be fucking banging even if he didn't evolve, but I digress. I think this summer, if he doesn't outwardly demand a trade, even if he's like, I don't know if I want to sign an extension, and you just decide you want to ride it out, which I think I would do if I'm Cleveland, I would just run the risk and say F it, whatever at this point. You're getting a new head coach. I don't know who that is. Budenholzer would have been my pick, but I'm getting a new head coach. Get me a new head coach. Jared Allen.
Get a new head coach and get one of these guys that's innovative offensively, because I think they have the pieces. You said they don't have an identity, and that's true, but I don't think that's because
it's because of JB.
Have one.
It's because of JB, and it's because Luke Walton, who's a bad NBA head coach, is like the lead assistant on this staff. That's the other problem.
Yeah,
it's like we saw what he did with the Kings.
Yeah,
it was,
get
bad.
David Edelman from the Nuggets, or get whatever, one of these guys that every coaching staff seems to have.
Yes, get one of those guys. He's your head coach. If you want a veteran like lead guy in the chair to help that guy, great. I don't care. Go ahead and do that. That's fine. Whatever.
Sure.
Just not Luke Walton. Jared Allen, thank you for your service. We're gonna trade you somewhere. We're gonna go do something else there. And I would really think about a Garland Ingram swap. I would really be thinking about that as a way I think that it could make sense for both teams. Ingram and Mitchell is not like my favorite wing fit. It is not.
I was gonna say, sell me on that aspect of it, because I think the best way, especially with some of the passing things you're talking about with Donovan, that to maximize him, because I think the closest the Cavs ever got to having the identity you're talking about over the 2 seasons he played there was the stretch that you mentioned a minute ago of him and Allen, basically just what he did with Gobert. I mean, frankly, just
but with less
of a better passer in that
less tension and less tension.
Yeah, less tension and honestly worse shooting. So even more impressive that it worked out. But I guess they were playing more shooters at that time, and that's an identity. But the flow, the pace, the less stickiness of the ball in a system like that, I'm not positive what Ingram would look like. Ingram slows everything to a halt and isn't really good enough to justify it, and that's kind of the problem with him right now.
It's just a talent bet, I think, because I think if you have Mitchell, I think that's just kind of the problem. Cleveland doesn't have the picks to compete for a Paul George trade, nor will Paul George. I think Paul George is good enough, I think, to kind of dictate where he wants to go, particularly because he's going to be a free agent or can be a free agent. They don't have the assets to go trade for OG or trade for whoever they would want. They can't go trade for Mikal Bridges. I think they would love Mikal Bridges, who is friends with Donovan Mitchell. They don't have the stuff.
Yeah.
Houston can just go outbid them. Ingram is kind of like their ability to go get the kind of big wing that they just have never had, and they just need to get a little bit bigger, I think. That's what
I was going to say. The size part of it is what makes me like it the most is, you're talking about at that point, like, is Strus your 2 and Donovan's your 1, and then you have another 4 in there, or you have Ingram as your 4, which is even bigger than what they're doing now with a Coro playing the 4 for them.
The starting 5 could be...
You just get bigger.
The starting 5 to me could be Mitchell, Okoro, Strus, Ingram, Mobley. That Okoro spaces, you have to pay him the summer as well, but he handles the point of attack so Donovan doesn't have to. You have Strus to do some of that as well, so he can secondary play make and keep some stuff moving. You get a better coach. You're spaced out. Mobley at the 5. You just got to throw him to the Wolves at this point. If Chet can do it, if Vic can do it, you got to just do it.
I'll say, it's easier said than done to be more spaced out if you're playing Mobley, Ingram, and Okoro. Those are all truly minus shooters for their position.
Yeah. But it's kind of like your best case. It's the problem is that if it's in Cleveland, I think whatever the outcome is, Brendon, is not going to look perfect. I think that's kind of the problem.
Sure. Yeah. But I'm glad we're on the same page, because one of the things I was going to say is, as we've all talked through which of the 4, how many of the 4 guys do you trade, I'm in the same place as you. I think it's Garland and Allen, and I think what we've seen with Donovan and Mobley playing together and playing well together with Mobley at center in the past, 5 playoff games, has been promising. And so the fact that has worked makes me kind of say, okay, we knew those were the 2 most talented guys, but the fact that they also fit, okay, let's go for it. But yeah, I had Nets, Spurs, and Magic for Garland, and then I had Pelicans and Warriors for Allen. Those are kind of the places that I went, and it's what are you getting? And especially in a win now mode, okay, if you get some picks in those trades, of course that's great to replenish what you gave up for Donovan, but are you getting real players back? Because you kind of need that most of all.
Yeah, I think the other problem with this roster right now is trading for Karis LeVert in the first place was a mistake. They shouldn't have given up a first for him. That was silly. That was just a bad move. I understand why you did it in a vacuum in the moment, but it has not aged well. I've been trying to use his salary in a trade this summer. George Niang, you gave $9 million to a year on your mid-level, and anyone could have seen where he's ended up as an unplayable guy in the playoffs. Where Marcus Morris is more reliable off the heat.
Yeah, but I think that's what you're saying, right? That it's not going to be ideal in Cleveland.
Yeah,
but it's just got to overpay.
It's just tough that it's Niang should be a $6 million guy on your bench, and he shouldn't be the $9 million. That's it's a quibble, but it's that stuff does add up ultimately.
It adds up.
Especially when you don't.
Harris is probably negative trade value right now, so if you're getting rid of him, you're probably giving something.
It's stacking him on out.
Makes it hard.
Yeah, it's not. No one's going to be, I think, super enthused to end up with LeVert at this point. And you signed him to a salary that I think was tradable, but yeah.
Besides Miami, where do you like Donovan the most? If he moves,
I would say this. I think he personally would love the Knicks. I don't think the Knicks make any sense for him.
Yeah, I think most people who are reasonable agree on that at this point. I think if it happens, we'll all kind of roll our eyes, but I don't think anybody feels like that makes sense given what Jalen Brunson has become.
Houston would be the one. Sengun would be kind of an interesting fit for him at center because it's a different kind of center that he's played with. He'd
have to be a lot more off ball on a team like that. He'd have to get used to coming off screens and
also him and Dylan Brooks in the same locker room is wild shit.
I still find myself liking the Brooklyn fit.
I just
think they're waiting for a player like that. I also like the Lakers fit, if I'm being honest, but they don't have a ton to give up. But I think they could maybe do it if they were willing to give up Reeves. I think they could get there.
So the Lakers one I do like. That's kind of the other one. The Nets one I don't like because I think the Nets run into the same problems. Even if they have McHale, they run into like a bunch of the same problems the Cavs do, roster wise, for
not having enough else.
The only advantage they have right now is that I think Jordi Fernandez is going to be an excellent NBA head coach who's going to run awesome shit, and he would get a ton out of Mitchell.
I also think that's very disrespectful to Cam Thomas, if we're being honest with each other. Just like really rude. He begs to differ. I think he thinks he's a lot else.
Yeah. He can do that in Cleveland if Donovan Mitchell is just being traded. Is what I would say.
Yeah, well,
I think Miami's kind of just the one to me. That's like the one. It has the trade package.
Yeah, but if
that
they don't have
sense.
Jimmy,
yeah,
if they can't figure out the Jimmy thing and make it tenable for at least another season, and you're talking about replacing Donovan with Jimmy, like Bam's great. Bam makes a ton of sense with how Donovan likes to play. He's obviously a great defensive piece. Up there with Allen or beyond Allen, up there with Mobley, up there with Gobert, but
can I give you one zany one?
I mean, what's the second? Terry Rozier is like his co-pilot on the offensive end. Like that's not great.
Can I give you my one zany one that I don't? It's not super realistic. I want to say that off the bat, but I've just been thinking about it. If they imploded and maybe don't win the finals this year, and
yeah,
what about him and Tatum together? And Brown ends up somewhere, and there's a weird 3-team, and it's Donovan ends up in Boston. It's him and Tatum.
Yeah, I haven't allowed myself to think about what Boston's summer looks like if they don't feel like this is going to work anymore. But sure, I mean, Donovan in that system doing kind of like what Derek White does, but at a higher level.
Also,
the offensive end, I mean,
yeah. And he's better at.
Makes sense. It's the most space you could possibly have.
And he's also if you wanted a counterweight to Tatum, who's never going to be passive, he's better at that than Jalen is to some degree. I think, even if he's a little bit smaller.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to be weird.
I mean, it makes a ton of sense on the court, but
that's why I said
pretty big for Boston Boston to break that up. It would be
that's why I said the zany.
Explosive.
Why I said the zany one.
But it's not it's not impossible. I mean, when Jalen signed that contract last summer, we were like, okay, this is kind of their year, but we'll see.
So let me end this Mitchell thing on this. Where is he playing basketball starting next season? Give me just your blind guess. I'm gonna say Cleveland because I have no idea.
I think if you're setting odds, it'd be Cleveland or the field, right? So I would take Cleveland too. Just because there's not one specific other place the same way that, well, maybe there will be in 3 weeks when it's Chris Haynes saying Donovan Mitchell has requested a trade to the blank, and then then now that's the place. But until we hear that,
he also the last time he was in trade stuff, he was pretty particularly not aggressive about trying to go the one place he definitely wanted to go, and then they didn't put RJ Barrett in a trade for him, and he ended up in Cleveland. So,
well, it's also his former general manager is kind of an asshole in trades, Danny Ainge. So
shout out.
Yeah. I'm not sure Kobe Altman's going to play the game quite as well if we're just keeping it 100 with each other.
Considering he gave up a first for Karis LeVert and gave George Niang a bunch of money and stuff, I tend to think that's probably fair.
So let's do. If Donovan wants to go somewhere, he'll go somewhere.
And he deserves it. That guy is awesome. He is special. His playoff run is he might have another 50. He might have another 50 in him before this all is said and done. And his team might still lose in 5, which just does raise questions. It's unfair, but it's reality. Glad you've come around, Brendon. That's all I'll say. All right, let's get into WNBA. We got some big topics we're gonna hit. Brendon, I think the big question for the year is is any team actually going to be able to beat the Aces? Here's the odds for the championship winners from BetMGM. Aces are plus 100, the Liberty plus 230, the Storm plus 1,000, the Sun plus 1,100, the Fever plus 1,800, the Wings plus 2,500, the Mercury plus 3,500, the Sky plus 4,000, and the Lynx plus 5,000. Some other teams, obviously, not even there right now. I'm just going to say I think the Aces are, barring unforeseen injury, no other team closed the gap. But I think the Storm had a great offseason. They did not close the gap enough to make this a real title race. What did the Liberty do to get demonstrably better this summer? Nothing. I think this is the Aces championship to lose.
Yeah, okay, but not to interrupt before you made your point, but I already know where this is going. I mean, obviously, the question says it all. I mean, the Liberty I think this question should be, can anybody beat the Aces or the Liberty?
Yeah.
They lost an embarrassing Game 4 on their home court, but we all thought that series was going 5. The Aces had injuries. The Liberty did not have the mettle and the connective tissue to weather their disconnect that happened and getting surprised with Sydney Colson doing her thing and everything else in that Game 4. But, I mean, if this is a Game 5 that comes down to an Asia Wilson game winner, are you saying the Aces are some kind of clear front runner?
I think they are. I just think they're bringing back basically the same.
What did they do to get better?
They don't need to get better.
They lost Candace Parker. They're really thin.
They're the same team as last year that won the title basically, and I don't know. I think Asia Wilson is the best player in the women's game right now, and I don't think it doesn't feel particularly. Stewie's close, but it's not that close right now.
Okay, but even the odds are saying that this is close to neck and neck. Plus 100, plus 230. So we were talking about these as two super teams as recently as last September. I think they're on even ground. I think that they're pretty close to equal, and I think that it's really hard to win 3 championships.
That's true. That's true.
If nothing else, that in and of itself is something's bound to happen. And they weathered the Candace Storm well. I mean, that's really impressive. They deserve a lot of credit for that. But I think the Liberty being another year better, another year more connected, will go a long way. Every comment you've heard out of that team. I interviewed Jonquel Jones a few months ago.
Shout out.
Sabrina had good stuff on this. They all feel like last year was really hard. And they all felt pissed off by that finals result. And Jonquel didn't have to come back. She chose to. She was a free agent. Stewie, same thing. So it feels like there's kind of a confidence, even though they did lose in such disappointing fashion. So I see it as a 2-horse race here. And I think if to answer the question of who else beyond that, I think the Storm, if they can get enough kind of wing depth to show up. Shooting, perimeter defense, things like that. But they have kind of their own little super team. Not maybe the super high-end talent of Vegas or New York, but they have Skylar Diggins-Smith there now, Nneka Ogwumike there now, in addition to Jewel Lloyd, who broke the total points record in the WNBA last year and has turned into a really efficient offensive weapon since Sue Bird retired and Stewie left and everything else. They also have a couple nice young centers and other role players there. So I think they're there. And then I would say this is more of a long shot. Maybe I'm a homer, but if prime Brittany Griner, the real MVP caliber player that was there prior to obviously everything that she's gone through with the detainment, shows up again, and she had all offseason to recuperate, recover, rehab, and physically get right. That team has Kalia Copper now, has some better depth, and could be there. Now, I wouldn't bet on that. I don't think they're going to be, but that's a long shot. That's at least in the ballpark here.
Can I ask you one last? As a Liberty fan, I don't have my hat on anymore. I did wear a Liberty hat in intention of wearing it on this show for that reason, then I took it off. I know she didn't play a big factor in the finals, but do they have any way to replace, do you think, what Marino Johannes gave them as like a bench spark plug for them last year? Because that to me is like a kind of a question of how they replace that specific energy that I thought did come in handy for them in certain games last year.
Yeah, it helps. It helps them for sure. Their whole bench has been remade. I think that's one of the big questions around that team is they just have a lot of new players, or somebody like Niara Sabali, who's didn't play a ton last year, but will be replacing like Stephanie Dolson is also gone.
Yep.
She played more so in the first half of last season than she got hurt. Sabali will be a big part of it, and some of these other international players, and Kennedy Burke, who they brought over from, I believe, Indiana, will be another kind of forward option. So their bench has to come along. So does the Aces, frankly. I mean, they're having to rely on like Megan Gustafson and some of these, really deep down players because cost is a problem when you have the star talent they have. It's not that different from NBA super teams. The Suns had to rely on freaking, Drew Eubanks. Like, this is what happens.
Yeah, Isaiah Thomas getting late season burn and all that. All right. Thing number 2. How good will the Indiana Fever be in year 1 with Caitlin Clark?
Yeah.
Caitlin Clark, by the way, already making history by she's heard their season opener, I believe on Tuesday, the first game to be streamed on the Disney Plus streaming service. The first live sporting event streamed on Disney Plus is a Caitlin Clark WNBA game. That's pretty incredible.
Yeah, it was going to happen either way. It's cool for her, cool for the WNBA to kind of like flash that. But it's really a business decision. It's not really a Caitlin Clark. There's a lot of Caitlin Clark records being broken. I'm going to give that one to like Disney shareholders.
Yeah,
they're probably kind of pushing for that.
Look, shareholder value, Brendon, does matter. And I would just say that it's cool that she like
the great rebundling is to blame more so than Caitlin.
But good for her by being able to get like this slight win.
It's cool. It'll be a moment, but I think they can be pretty good.
I agree.
I think that they'll be a playoff team would be my prediction. I think beyond that, it's really about defense, in terms of what their rotation looks like right now. I would say Aaliyah Boston, who's amazing, having a center anchor that's as good as Aaliyah Boston is not something to just gloss over when you're talking about how good they can be on defense, but she's only one person. And Lexi Hull, who's probably going to be like a rotation guard, not any sort of, constant presence on the court for them, are the only 2 players I think are plus defenders in this whole rotation. Caitlin Clark obviously has her limitations there. Erica Wheeler, who will be her backup, is not kind of an undersized player, not really a defensive difference maker. Kelsey Mitchell is a tough player, but not some kind of stopper herself. Melissa Smith has size, has the potential, but not always a huge shot blocker or anything like that yet. So it'll be up to Chrissy Sides, the coach, to develop that side of the ball and have their sum be greater than their parts on defense. Otherwise, I think they'll be kind of fun. Probably an early exit in the playoffs, but either way, they'll be competitive all year. I think that's for sure.
Yeah, they won't have Mitchell, I believe, to start the year. She had an ankle injury that kept her out at the start of training camp, but they'll get her back at some point. That'll be, I think, a good addition, at least just another good body. The number one thing I want to see how fast it comes along is the 2-man game between Clark and Aaliyah Boston. They obviously have played together before in Team USA stuff. They're familiar with each other. I think they're both really just intangible, smart players that I think will kind of get together pretty quick. Clark in particular, I think, by the looks of what you can tell from box scores and clips and things, is just playing like Caitlin Clark so far in the WNBA. She's not going to not be herself.
What did you think of the quotes from Sides about? Did you see this kind of about?
No,
she's trying to get her to change her style. I'll summarize it. It wasn't like the most deep quote, but it was just the fact that she said it was what got attention, which was that she said basically she didn't want Caitlin to always resort to these long pull-up threes, and that she wants her to kind of embrace pull-up twos, whether that's a long two or a floater or some of those intermediate spaces, and then to really focus on off-ball movement. She was kind of pointing out how she will sort of buzz around the ball.
I think I found did she call it dancing? I believe is the word she used to. Yeah. Sure.
And so people just were like, how could you possibly tell her to change? It's like, well, she's the head coach of the team. I kind of would hope she would have some
have a
pointers
take
for her best player. That'd be nice,
that'd
probably
be cool.
helpful. So I wasn't like bothered by it like some people were, but it's interesting, and it just speaks to the evolution she's going to have. And I think the realization we're going to kind of watch her have on the court of like, these are the best players I've ever played with in my life, and how does that change her game? So it'll be fun from that standpoint. But I mean, they'll push for one of the best offenses in the league, I would think.
Yeah,
with how much spacing they have and a finisher down low and Alyssa Smith who can just kind of get buckets, like I think they'll be right there. So I think they'd finish above 500, make the playoffs, and then we'll see kind of how they fare from there. What do you think?
I agree. I think the offense is going to be great. I think Clark and Boston will hit the ground running. They would be a team to me that if anyone was going to, in-season trades or can be what they are, but if any team was going to go try to just like go for some stuff, like I kind of would, it would make sense for them to some degree to maybe find some kind of defensive piece out there. But I think I would expect also, I would just expect like there's going to be ups and downs. This is what I would say is baked into this as well. This is like the core of this team is still really young. Like, yes, Kelsey Mitchell's been around a while, but this is Caitlin Clark.
Much it. Katie Lou Samuelson's like
right.
The only other vet on the team.
Yeah, she's
and
like
Wheeler,
and she's like the old. Those are the old heads in the team. But it's like Clark is a rookie. Boston's in year 2. Like Lexi Hall's like all these players are incredibly young. This isn't gonna be like some waves. It's gonna have some volatility to it a little bit. And I think where that ends up, I think will be interesting. But I kind of also, how Caitlin Clark in particular, how Brendon, if she does stop, like acquiesce a little bit to some of this coaching stuff while keeping her flair, maybe that's good for her. And so maybe we see like a more precise version of her that isn't like playing like Trae Young, which is, I think, if it's more dialed back, that could be interesting. If it's her in Boston, maybe she's like a 8 assist a game every night kind of player in the system. All right, next one. Who makes the Olympic team? Which, if people don't know,
it's a continuation of the Caitlin Clark question, really.
Yes.
I mean, the mystery here is if Caitlin will make the team, and
because the season
who doesn't make the team,
right? And because the season will pause for about a month, and that there's obviously a lot of players like Bruno Johannes among others. Like they're not playing this year in preparation for the Olympics because of the WNBA season overlaps the Olympics,
qualifying tournaments and practices and all that stuff. Because the league is implemented rules where you have to be in market, otherwise you can't play the season. So basically, where we are with the American team is, names like Asia Wilson, Brianna Stewart, Kelsey Plum, they're locks. I would think Jewel Lloyd, probably Griner. But then you start to get into, deeper names like Boston, Ryan Howard, and I think most interestingly, Diana Taurasi, who very similarly to what's going on with the end of her career in Phoenix, she's on a contract year. You could easily make the case, Chris, that she is it's been an honorary roster spot or salary spot for her the past few seasons, even as she's continued to be productive. She really does not play a lot of defense anymore. She's 41 going on 42. Mm-hmm. They haven't, partially because of Griner's situation, but since they made the finals in 2021, they haven't really been that competitive of a team. Is it a lock that she gets her 6th Olympics just because that's what you do? I would kind of think yes. She'd be the obvious one to kick off in order to let Caitlin get in. If you don't go that route, you're getting into the territory of you're actually kicking somebody off who deserves it, who's in their prime, who has earned that opportunity, who might have been on the team last time in Tokyo and has been in a track record with USA Basketball. And, the CEO of the USOPC said fairness is the number one priority. Said one of our goals and clear areas of focus is fairness. It is the single most important thing to athletes. We ask them questions and we survey them. A level playing field and fairness is at the very top. I think it's going to be natural if they put Caitlin on the team to question what's going on there, and if it's just kind of a money grab, and it's going to result in somebody very worthy getting kicked off the team.
Yeah, hasn't played at a senior level Team USA camp yet, if I'm not mistaken. Caitlin Clark obviously been around the U19s and stuff before this. Some of the players...
There was some quote I saw where either she said or somebody with the Olympic team said that the beginning of the season will be kind of her tryout. And I guess we'll see.
Players that are more veteran than her that she could make it over. Would include Ariel Atkins, this would be her second Olympics. Clea Copper, Sabrina Ionescu.
Mm-hmm.
Those would kind of be the ones, because I feel like I was looking at the Athletics breakdown of this, Brendon, and this. Do you want me to read you how they broke down this roster? We can do this quickly. Taurasi Griner, Asia Wilson, Brianna Stewart, Chelsea Gray, Nafessa Collier, Alyssa Thomas, Jewel Lloyd, Kelsey Plum, Jackie Young, Aaliyah Boston, Caitlin Clark.
Yeah. So, I mean, you're talking about, to me, just given kind of what they do, would it be Plum? Would it be Lloyd? Would it be Chelsea Gray? I mean, yeah, that would be kind of crazy, right? Like, those are champions. Those are the scoring leader in the league last year. Those are people in their 30s. So it's going to be interesting. It's going to be a big storyline as we get closer, because this team wins the gold every year. They're just the best. So what happens is significant.
And there is history of players of a certain ilk like getting in there quicker, like Candace Parker, I think, did it, and I think Nneka Ogwumike had like a rise as well. But I think, considering
Stewie was in the same situation as Caitlin. She was on the team before finishing a WNBA season. So that's the most 1-to-1. Yeah.
Yeah. So we'll see. I'm sure people will have feelings about it one way or the other. All right.
You think?
Yeah. Brendon, non-Aces, non-Liberty, non-Fever team who you are excited to watch.
I'm a homer here too, the Mercury. I think they're trying a lot of things that are pretty unique, not just because of the Griner and Taurasi connection and them being in my backyard, but they have Clea Copper. They have kind of modern big and Rebecca Allen now. They got Natasha Cloud. They're making no secret of the fact they want to play an NBA style. They hired a assistant coach from the NBA and Nate Tibbetts to come coach the team. They hired an executive from Golden State and Nick Uren, who was the guy who thought of the Andrew Bogut guarding Tony Allen thing, for anybody who needs a refresher there, to be the GM of the Mercury. And they're NBAing it up here. What does that look like? How good can they be? We talked about the Taurasi angle. We talked about the Griner angle already. They're the most interesting team to me, even if, again, I'm not really thinking they're going to win the title.
Nick Uren, I believe, was also the guy who came up with the idea to start Iguodala over David Lee.
That's what it was. I think it was more that. I'm second guessing if it was the Bogut Allen thing.
Yeah. Yeah, that one, obviously, that name, seared into my brain as a Cleveland person. My answer is the Storm. I think this team, obviously, post Stewie, post Sue Bird, has been looking for an identity. I think they're closer to having one than they've been since then. You bring in Skylar Diggins-Smith. You still you have Nneka Ogwumike now. You have Jewel Lloyd still. Like, that roster is really good. I think that team's going to be really good. And, it's coming off of the tournament. We'll see how much she plays. Like, Nika Mules could be a fun rookie. Nika Mule could be a really fun, grinding kind of rookie as like a counterweight to some of the things that the other guards in the team don't really do. So I am all in on the Storm this year.
I just like how that team fits.
It makes so much sense. Like, everything
even
about
the
it.
Stars, it's just like, that's kind of what you would want to put together as a team. I think they needed some shooting to go well, like I said, but it should be a pretty instant match, I think, for the Diggins-Smith Ogwumike side of things, at least, for sure.
Yes. All right, team you're skeptical of.
Yeah,
Wings. Oh, the Wings is to me. I had a tie between the Wings and in your backyard, the Mercury. I just like the Mercury. Yeah. Talk about the Wings.
I mean, the Wings, I think it's not getting enough attention that they were kind of the surprise of last year, and they were like we were all talking about who was going to be the kind of dark horse to break up the super team collision course. It ended up being them, but Satu Sabali is their best player. She's hurt. She's not going to be back until she might be back after the Olympics. She might miss a really substantial amount of time this season. Their roster is still a little awkward in terms of they don't have a surefire primary point guard. They traded away Crystal Dangerfield, who started for them last year. Seems like they might slot in rookie J.C. Sheldon for those minutes quite a bit. Just kind of an awkward roster. Satu held it all together. If she's not around, it's just kind of weird. It's going to be, Enrique chucking shots and them just trying to get offensive rebounds, and how good is that going to be? So I think if you're expecting and then they'll take their next step, maybe not.
Yeah, I'm with that. Mercury, it's obvious. Taurasi's old. What is Griner like? What is she fully capable of at this point? Like, there's just a lot of unknowns, and on top of all the organizational stuff, it's kind of like a basketball experiment over in your neck of the woods. So that's my answer. All right, player you are excited to watch.
It's the same every year. As far as non kind of name brand people in the league who aren't on like the top of the top teams, it's Ryan Howard. She's the most fun player in the league for me to watch, even compared to some of those. I mean, it might be Asia and then her in the W for me. And if Ryan can continue to develop as a passer and driver like she started to do last year, I mean, she has the potential to be like one of the best players in the whole entire league. If that stuff comes along, she has the size and the shooting ability to make that happen. If you were ever like, what if Klay Thompson was like an awesome athlete? Like, that's kind of what Ryan Howard is.
Turn
her games on.
Future Orlando Magic shooting guard Klay Thompson.
I'll go with Ryan Howard on the Magic. She'd make them better too. So
yeah.
Any of them, sure. They need shooting.
All right,
I shouldn't be biased on gender. I don't think that.
Yeah, that's true. All right, I'll give you two. One veteran, one rookie. Cameron Brink is my rookie. I think she's just going to be awesome off the bat. That Sparks team is obviously she's going to be at the center, literally, of everything. They're retooling there. Really well known coach. That's a pristine organization. She also just seems to like get it. And then Kalia Copper in Phoenix. I think they're just like a big opportunity.
I think we just have to adopt what a lot of Sky fans did, and on this show, we might just have to call her Kalia fucking Copper every time.
All right, Kalia fucking.
Because there's like T-shirts out there with that.
Oh, can I buy that? I would buy that.
It's kind of just what it is.
All right, Kalia fucking Copper.
She's on a new team now, so I think they were Sky oriented shirts.
Well,
I gotta say,
all right. I prefer purple and orange anyway.
I mean, same. I mean, yeah,
but like,
that's a given. I don't even think I have to agree with you there. But yeah, I mean, the fact that I get to cover her, she's literally like, I mean, we've gloated and sing the praises of guys like Anthony Edwards and people like that plenty. Like, she's the WNBA version of that. She's just a sick athlete who's developed as a shooter over time. She's like all about all the right shit as an off-court person. I tossed her the softball of softballs at Media Day, and I was like, so what's it like being at an organization that like values and invests in you? And she was like, well, you just said it, and then gave me like 2 minutes.
Oh, fuck yeah.
Because the Sky were a freaking dumpster fire. So the fact that she's in a place where she can like really just do what she's supposed to be doing and not worry about the nonsense, and she's already won a Finals MVP, like, yeah, she's must watch.
There's also going to be one game this year where her and Taurasi both are like cooking, and that game's going to be fucking awesome. Like, there's just going to be one game.
Also, her and Sophie Cunningham like hated each other in the finals a few years ago. Now they're teammates. There's a lot. There's a lot to enjoy about the KFC experience this year.
Yeah. All right. Last question, the big one. Last thing. Predict your title winner and your league MVP.
You go first this time.
All right. MVP Asia Wilson. I think there's a. This is her moment in a lot of ways. I think she is the best two-way player in the league. I think the way she feels just like a megastar right now. It feels like someone who controls the game every time she's on it. And I'm going to pick the Aces to win it again. I am a little less confident than I was at the beginning of this segment, Brendon, based on kind of what you said and thinking about it and just like looking at and just like really looking at the roster and being like, am I sure about this? Am I sure about this?
Alicia Clark's like 35 years old. She's also very integral to their success if she were to get hurt. You know?
Yeah, it's tough. But Asia Wilson plus Jackie Young plus Kelsey Plum plus Chelsea Gray with Becky Hammond as the head coach. I'm just going to ride with that
recipe.
I'm just going to ride with that recipe and ride the Aces doing it again. And maybe I am just a little bit hurt because of the way the Liberty didn't exactly acquiesce themselves the way I thought they were going to in the finals last year. Maybe just a little bit of pain there.
All right. It's one of those years in the W where there's not going to be a wide variance in picks here, but I do have a different title pick than you. I'm going to pick the Liberty.
Okay.
So I think that they'll hit a new level this year, and I think they were a lot closer than the end result would make them seem in the finals, given that they lost it on their home court against the shorthanded Aces squad, but I think that series easily could have gone down to the wire in a Game 5, and we would feel differently. If they're even better than that, then that gives them a leg up. And again, talked about nobody had repeated in the W in 20 years. Three-peating is, yet another level above that, obviously. So I'll go with New York. And then a MVP, I have Asia as well. The late push she made when Candace went out last year, a lot of the case people made for her, that's going to be all season this year. So that's kind of my case. It doesn't really get much more difficult than that. She has to play defensive anchor and number one scorer for a team that is trying to get the 1 seed and win a championship. So she should be the MVP pretty much every year unless she has a down season.
Yeah. It's like here or Stewie feels like or like in Alyssa Thomas, like old reliable.
And Stewie got it last year, so
yeah.
I could see voters just being like, all right, let's do the other thing.
Who's
give it to the
a
other
fun prop
How
bet?
many MVP votes will Caitlin Clark get?
Probably too many would be my answer.
She'll probably finish like 4th.
Yeah. Well,
no
my question, yeah, definitely. My question was going to be like some random guy like from like the Hartford Current, and I'll be like, what? The Des Moines Red, you'll be like, what? Who's the next non-Asia Alyssa Thomas, Brianna Stewart player to win MVP? Like if you like, that'd be a good prop bet, like a good futures prop bet. Like you could be like Satu Sabli like plus 2,000 and be like, yeah, sign me up.
It would have to be a talent dispersal because part of why they keep winning it is because their teams are the only real championship contenders. So
yeah,
another player could have a really good season, but if they're, you know what I mean, if their team is still like finishing 5th in the standings, then it's like, for what?
All right,
so
Paige
Paige
Becker
in their prime.
Paige Becker's plus 5,000 when she's playing for the Sparks in a year.
Sure, I'll take it.
All right. Great.
I mean, it's not going to be them forever. So, yeah, Caitlin or Paige is, I mean, as good a bet as anything. I'm just saying. I'm not expecting the Liberty or Aces to quiet down for a while. So, we got a ways to go.
I agree. All right, we're going to end there. Look cool. Like I said at the top, a jam-packed episode of the Just Basketball Show. We covered goddamn near everything going on in basketball on the show today. Please, we'll be back on Wednesday. It'll be me and Wes Goldberg getting you up to date on the latest NBA. Well, I'm sure we'll have some lists, some sound effects. That's what happens when Wes is around. But until next time, enjoy the hoops. We'll talk to you next time.